Hello, hello. Welcome to Mindset to Results podcast show. And today our guest is Bill Simpson. He is a relationship coach for men and coming from working in a health clinic for women. So let's discover this interesting story and what value we can find in this experience, which Bill will share today with us. Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for being here today and having this inspiration to share your story.
Well, thanks, Elena. I appreciate being a guest on your show and to be able to share my story. Um, yeah, I had been a professional coach for over 20 years, and over the years, I've seen a lot of women. And the past 9 years, I've worked at a major health clinic here in Philadelphia, in the U.S., where I live. And over the past 9 years, most of my clients or patients have been women. And I would hear the same story over and over again about the men that they love and want to be in relationship with, yet they just, weren't opening up with their feelings and all kinds of different things. And I would say, well, what if he were to say this, or what if he were to say that? And they would go, oh, that would make all the difference in the world. And so it just a light bulb went off for me to hear like these women who are suffering and really wanting to be with these men and just not getting what they need from them. And I thought, oh, okay, I can help them do that. And a part of my story too is that I've been through 3 divorces in my life. So I went through a lot of trials and tribulations in terms of relationship. I knew I always wanted to be one. I wanted to be married. I'm with my current wife now for the past 15 years, and it just keeps getting better and better because of all the things that I had to go through in order to be better in relationship. I had to learn these things in order to, I was that guy, that wasn't being empathetic, that wasn't being open with my feelings, or all the things that the women were saying. And I'm like, okay, I can identify with those men. And now that I've learned this stuff, I want to share with them so they don't have to go through what I went through with 3 divorces, right? So
Yeah, it is really so important what you do because I always had this question like how it happens that people fell in love and have all these romantic feelings and all these their dreams about future, they dream to live together, to have children, to have family, to travel, whatever, and then in just a year or two or sometimes even less
mhm.
they find themselves in the court for divorce, right? So I always was thinking like why this happened, what like initially people want to be with each other, right? Like what happened with those feelings, what happened with those relations, what is the biggest cause that steps on their way and becomes that breaking point. How did you discover this?
Yeah, I think part of it is a big part of it is our subconscious behavior. Um, it's what we learn growing up and how we communicate and how our parents interacted with each other and things like that. So we learn these different behaviors that were modeled for us, and then we end up taking them into our most intimate relationships. So if we haven't resolved some of that stuff that's been going on, that went on in our childhood, we're likely to repeat those patterns unless we become aware of it. And that's coming from a deeper level, that subconscious level. So we're just on autopilot. We're just acting like how we grew up, how our family was, how the dynamics were in our family. And so we're just oblivious to what's happening. So we have this spark of love and these feelings for someone that you connect with, and then these patterns start creeping in on both sides, not just the men, not just the women. It takes two to do this, right? So what ends up happening, and I'd say the two major things that happen in a relationship is a lack of communication or a communication breakdown, and then there's the conflict of needs conflict. What do I need and what you need? And when we can't resolve that and we're stuck in our old subconscious patterns, then we get stuck in this mess and then wonder, how in the heck did I get here? And what I try to do is shine the light on what could be happening in that relationship. I don't start off going into your childhood and all that stuff. That's kind of that's what a therapist would do. I'm here to meet you today and moving forward. And sometimes what will happen is those patterns from our childhood will creep into our conversation, and then we start connecting the dots to say, well, see, this is how your mom was, or maybe, in my case, my mother had left me when I was, well, my parents had divorced when I was 6, and then I lived with my mom, and then 2 years later, she gave custody to my father, and I didn't see her for. She ended up dying 5 years later, and I never saw her in between that 5 year period. So what I didn't realize was I had a fear of abandonment because my mom left me at a young age. I didn't know that consciously, but it played out in my relationships because I would always overlap a relationship. So when even from as early as high school, I would have one girlfriend, and then it would kind of get old, and I would meet another, and then I'd let go of the old girlfriend, and so on. And that even carried into my first marriage, where I had cheated, and then ended up marrying the person that I cheated with, and then I started getting more and more awareness, and I realized that it was that fear of me being alone, that I had to be with somebody all the time. And once
Mhm.
I recognized that and was able to really be alone and do this for me, not to be with someone else, then that's where everything shifted.
So it is like subconsciously you were afraid that that person can leave you. That's
Right.
why you choose to leave first in
Right.
order not to be hurt.
You got it. Yep.
So
So that
even if everything was good, and like there was even no threat that you will be abandoned, but subconsciously it was just you had that fear that it can happen anytime, unexpectedly. That's why you were choosing to protect yourself by getting into another relations.
Right. And that was totally, like you said, subconscious. I wasn't consciously aware that I was doing it. And probably it wasn't so much that nothing was going on. It would probably be something that triggered, ooh, she may want to leave me. So let me leave first, and then I would be safe.
Mhm.
So, if I hadn't had that awareness, if I hadn't gone to therapy and really dug deep into that and recognized that's the subconscious pattern, then I would probably continue to repeat the patterns. And I see it all the time. And when I see men and see where their patterns are, then we talk about the pattern and say, let's break this pattern and see what happens.
Yeah, and the most important to find the reason where this pattern started. Yes, so when we have this conscious awareness about that, and we see, then we will see the links, like all this behavior related to that especially moment and that situation in our past.
Right. And like I said earlier, that's more of a therapist's job to go deep into the childhood and all that. Yet it often reveals itself in in conversation, and how I, ask a little bit about their past and their relationships, and the pattern starts to show, and then based on that pattern, then I ask them to reflect, hey, does this make sense that in my case that my mom left and I would have a fear of abandonment, right?
Yes, and usually when it happens with the uh, when you are a child, yes, you also subconsciously can think that you are not worth, that it happened because of you, right? Because small children, they find themselves guilty, and it
Exactly.
also can have that feeling that I'm not worthy of love because my mother left me.
Right, right. It must have been something I did or something about me that she
Mm,
otherwise why would she have left? And that's a child's mindset, right?
yeah.
And then as a grown up, as an adult, I learned how to take care of that little boy. So I responsible for him. I can't let him run my relationship. He's 8 years old. He doesn't belong in a relationship, right? And a therapist gave me a tool years ago. I wish I had it with me, but I have a little doll, a little boy doll. It's kind of like a little Cabbage Patch type of doll. And my therapist said to get a doll, and it took me 2 years to find him. And because it's really hard, to find a boy doll. And then
Mhm.
when I found one, it didn't have the characteristics of me, because that's what it's all about. And I was able to go to a craft store, and I got some markers, and he had blue eyes. I painted his eyes brown. I gave him eyebrows. And all of a sudden, I got all choked up and started to cry. And I realized I found my little boy. So, it may sound weird, but I was able to hold that doll, that little boy, and be the adult, the dad, the mom, especially the mom that didn't leave or that left. I could
Mhm.
be I could be the mom for him, to say, "Hey, it wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve that. It wasn't about you. It was about her." And that
Mhm.
was an amazing tool that I had to help me heal that little boy in me, so I could be a healthy adult in a relationship.
Mhm. Yes, yes, it is very powerful, really.
Yeah.
When people understand that it is not them, it is just that little boy, little girl who is inside, who were uh, coming through some challenges, and it didn't go anywhere. It is all stay in subconscious mind, and we are creatures of habits. Yes, our paradigm is a multitude of habits, and the habits is what we do. Almost our behavior mostly is habitual behavior.
Yeah,
And
it's about what, 90% or something like that. Yeah.
yes, habitual behavior means that we don't think. We just do things which are programmed. We are conditioned to do certain things, to say certain things in certain situations. Even it happens that we do something or say something before we think,
Right.
right?
Right.
Some
Yeah.
situation happens and we just react. If we don't train ourselves, if we don't work on our uh, personality, our uh, how we behave, right? If we don't create new habits, for example, habits not reacting but habits to respond, and it means that
Right.
whatever happens, you take the time, you take pause, you think first, and then you say something, right? If we
Exactly.
don't become aware of this, and if we just continue, this is how we can just say something without thinking, because somebody else, our parents were telling this when we were small, and this is how we can hurt person, and then we say, oh, why I said, I didn't even have that intention, it just something happened, right? So it
Right.
means it is like two people, like two personalities. One is which is conscious, and another one is which unconscious, and that unconscious is much bigger. Like
Yeah.
it occupies everything if we don't take control, if we not aware, and if we uh, don't consciously take that power back, we will continue running the same programs again and again. And that is why people, they leave relations and they start relations and they have the same.
Right. Because they're repeating those subconscious patterns over and over. And then they wonder, they'll say, well, I keep attracting the same type of person. Well, maybe, but if you look at yourself, it's I keep repeating the same patterns. And
Exactly.
maybe, and then there's also some truth in that the same person shows up each time, because that's a familiar energy that you're familiar with, whether it's good for you or not. I know this. I don't know a healthy relationship, so I'm going to gravitate towards this because I know this.
Yes, and another thing which you just said now, that people think I keep attracting the same person. Yes, because it is important to understand that you are the cause.
Yeah.
Everything has cause and effect,
Yeah.
and your marriage is the effect. but you are the cause. So
Hmm.
if you don't change the cause, if you don't change yourself, if you don't find in yourself these patterns, why this behavior causes these situations, you will continue getting the same results.
That's right.
It will become worse and worse. Actually, it doesn't become easier. It becomes worse because universe just shows you that wake up and just start changing, start finding this course in yourself. Because if you don't solve this, if you don't change this, you will be hidden. You will be hidden even worse. That's
Right.
why
And
this, yeah.
absolutely. And I say to guys a lot, you are the problem and you are also the solution, right? And it's so easy to blame, my spouse or my partner for everything. Oh, she does this, she does that. Well, she may be doing all that, but what